Having fun with GPT-generated Ghibli images of yours? Just remember, you're doing it over someone's dead body. And don't think it's about sympathizing with the father of Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki. Rather, what I'm going to tell you is far more sinister and terrifying, and after listening to everything, you might feel suffocated with the utter helplessness. To give you some context, have you watched this Netflix movie that was released last year? In this film, the female protagonist uses an AI assistant to erase her ex from their couple photos, only to discover his secret investigation into a powerful AI company. As she delves deeper, she realizes the same company owns the AI assistant she's been using. Even worse, when they discovered her ex was a whistleblower, they silenced him, making his death look like an accident. And coincidentally, the same happened in reality too, with OpenAI. Let me break it down for you, and keep watching till the end because I'll give you a harsh reality check that might leave you thoughtful. Just 5 days after his 26th birthday, the young AI researcher Suchir Balaji was dead, and no one knew exactly why. A few weeks before his death, Balaji had done something bold. He had gone on record against one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, OpenAI. He had accused them of breaking US copyright law, of building their billion-dollar empire on stolen work. He had the credentials to back it up, because he wasn't some outsider throwing stones. He had been on the inside, working with the very data that powered AI models like the GPT-4. But who is he exactly? Why did he turn against the tech giant he helped build? Balaji wasn't just another programmer, he was a prodigy. By 13, he had built his own computer. By 14, he was writing papers on chip design. By 17, he was already working at Quora. And at 18, he was competing and winning on the global stage in programming contests. He studied computer science at UC Berkeley, but school was just a formality. No wonder a tech giant would find him right after graduation and offer him a job. In his case, it was OpenAI who hired him. For nearly 4 years, he worked at the heart of artificial intelligence research shaping the future. And then, suddenly, he left. In August 2024, he walked away from OpenAI. He spoke cryptically about his decision. "If you believe what I believe, you have to just leave." But what did he believe? And why did it push him to abandon one of the most prestigious AI research labs in the world? The answer came in October 2024 in an explosive interview with the New York Times. What did he reveal in that interview? We will come to that later, but within just 1 month, he mysteriously died in his own apartment. His last known moments on November 22, 2024, looked disturbingly ordinary. A young man, casually dressed, earbuds in, stepping out to grab his dinner. He picked up a brown paper bag, probably thinking about nothing more than a quiet evening ahead, much like just another tech professional unwinding after a long day. The security camera captured him one last time at 7:30 p.m. on November 22nd, walking through the lobby of his San Francisco apartment building. Basically, at that time, he had just returned from a birthday trip with friends. He spoke to his father that evening, chatting about the holiday and making tentative plans for January. Nothing seemed out of place. However, by November 25th, his mother had not heard from him, which was unusual. Concerned, she decided to visit his apartment the following day, November 26th. When she arrived, she knocked on the door but received no response. After waiting, she contemplated filing a missing person report but hesitated, thinking it might upset him if he turned up. It wasn't until she contacted the police the next day that the grim reality unfolded. When the San Francisco police entered Balaji's apartment shortly after 1 p.m. on November 26th, they discovered his lifeless body, and then just 15 minutes. That's all it took for the police to decide that Suchir Balaji had killed himself. No investigation, no second guessing, just a quick declaration, as if they were in a hurry to close the case. But, considering everything, isn't it too much of a coincidence? Just one man with some major evidence against the most profitable AI giant got eliminated exactly when the court took him seriously. Why would a brilliant mind like him end his life at this moment? So, people started looking closer, and the moment they did it, the cracks in the story became impossible to ignore. The crime scene itself was the first red flag. Balaji's body was slumped against a chair, blood pooling around him. A Glock pistol lay nearby. But something about the whole setup felt staged, too neat, too convenient. Then there was the gunshot wound. The bullet had entered from above his nose and lodged in the back of his skull, an angle that made no sense for a self-inflicted gunshot. It was a single bullet, entering through the forehead at a downward angle. And what's even stranger was that it didn't kill him instantly, because the bullet didn't even pass through his brain. Instead, it traveled down, through the spinal cord, lodging itself in the back of his neck. A slow, agonizing death. On the other hand, victims who die from a self-inflicted gunshot wound do not usually shoot themselves from above. Instead, they aim for the temple, the mouth, or under the chin. But that wasn't the only wound. A trauma mark on the side of his head suggested he had been struck before the fatal shot. Was he knocked unconscious first? And if so, by whom? Plus, the blood trail told another story. It wasn't confined to one spot. Experts found at least 5 different locations where blood had splattered, indicating movement, something that shouldn't happen in a suicide. A body collapses where it falls. It doesn't move. Even more disturbing, clumps of hair were found in different parts of the room. Some strands were embedded in blood-soaked fabric. Some weren't even human, but synthetic fibers, like from a wig or artificial extensions. Clearly, someone else had been there. And then, there was something weird in the crime scene. The food. A plate of half-eaten dinner sat on the table, with bits of it scattered on the floor. A tipped-over glass, an abandoned meal. These signs all point to one thing: a struggle, which was in stark contrast to the police department's conclusion. So, whatever had happened, it had interrupted him. Someone had walked into that room while he was still eating, and yet, the police never considered it relevant. And most importantly, a more chilling clue lay in what was missing. Balaji's apartment had been messed up. The drawers were slightly opened, and personal items were misplaced. But only one thing was gone completely: a storage device containing sensitive files. Files that, according to his family, held critical information about OpenAI's operations. Because Balaji had been a vocal whistleblower, warning the world about OpenAI's unethical data practices. He claimed they were using copyrighted material without permission, training their models on stolen content. If true, his revelations could have turned OpenAI's empire upside down. But now, with him gone, so were his files. However, you see, whoever came in there didn't touch his money or any other asset. The only thing missing was that backup drive he had been working on. But his laptop? Still there. His phone? Untouched. So, clearly, it's not a random burglary but a planned crime. But why did such a brilliant mind have to die this way, only for the truth to be covered up? Well, the reason is rooted in why Balaji left a prestigious and high-paying job at OpenAI in the first place. For 4 years, Suchir Balaji thought he was building the future. Now, he wasn't so sure. At OpenAI, he had helped train artificial intelligence on vast amounts of internet data. He never questioned where the data came from. It was all out there, on the internet, free for the taking. Or so he thought. Then, in late 2022, ChatGPT was released, and that's when the first cracks appeared. While everyone was highly impressed, Balaji couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. He had spent years collecting the digital building blocks of AI, but he had never asked the real question: did OpenAI even have the right to use this data? The answer was worse than he could have imagined. It was a case of a huge copyright breach. At first, it seemed like an overreaction. Companies use the internet data all the time. Google, Facebook, and Twitter, they all scraped and stored data for algorithms, ads, and search engines. But ChatGPT was different. It wasn't just analyzing data, it was consuming it. Most importantly, not just public data, there were copyrighted content too. like books, news articles, research papers, art forms. Some artists' entire lifetimes of work were fed into a machine that could now reproduce them in seconds. The result? Multiple lawsuits started rolling in. Authors, journalists, musicians, artists all claimed their work had been stolen to train AI that now threatened their very existence. Even the New York Times, one of the world's most powerful news organizations, took OpenAI and Microsoft to court, accusing them of using millions of its articles to build chatbots that could now compete with human journalists. But OpenAI wasn't backing down. The company said in defense that it was all under fair use. They even claimed that training AI on internet data was legal, transformative, and protected under existing copyright laws. Their point was that the AI wasn't copying content, it was learning from it, like a human, or like a student studying textbooks to write their own essays. But Balaji knew it better. He had seen what really happened behind the scenes, and it was nothing like human learning. So, technically, OpenAI was downright lying, manipulating the narrative. Balaji had worked on GPT-4, one of OpenAI's most powerful AI models, and he knew exactly how it learned. When an AI model trains on data, it doesn't just read it, it stores it. And later, when asked the right questions, it can bring that data back. Sometimes it returns the result word for word, and sometimes it comes as rewritten just enough to avoid suspicion. This sounds much like a perfect crime, and what it's doing is called intellectual theft. They took millions of articles, books, and conversations, then remixed them into something that seemed new, but contained no original content. They could rewrite a news article so well that the original author might not even recognize it. But the DNA of that work? Still there, and still stolen. Balaji had always believed AI was meant to solve humanity's greatest challenges: cure diseases, fight climate change, extend human life. Instead, it was being used to replace the very people who had created the internet's wealth of knowledge. And the worst part? No one was stopping it. So, Balaji started to see the bigger picture. It wasn't just about copyright infringement. It was about survival. But how? For centuries, creators had made a living off their work. Writers wrote, artists painted, journalists investigated, musicians composed. And now, AI was replacing all of them. And as AI models improved, people stopped visiting news websites. They stopped buying books. They stopped paying artists. Because why pay for content when ChatGPT could generate something similar within seconds for free? And it got worse. The AI wasn't just ruining real knowledge, it was also making things up. With fake news, false history, fabricated legal cases, AI wasn't just threatening human jobs, it was also threatening the truth itself. Balaji knew there was only one way out: regulation, which OpenAI won't agree to do. So, in August, he walked away from OpenAI, leaving behind a career, a paycheck, and a front-row seat to one of the biggest technological revolutions in history. Because he didn't want to be a part of this anymore. Now, as AI companies continue to push the boundaries of what's legal and what's ethical, he's raising his voice. Some lawmakers were also starting to listen. Intellectual property experts were warning that current copyright laws weren't designed for AI, but amidst all these, they needed some proof. Maybe you also need to see it. So let's check this out. Generative models learn patterns from large datasets and create new content based on that learning. The issue is that many training datasets include copyrighted material, raising legal concerns. Under U.S. copyright law, fair use depends on whether the content is transformed into something new, how much is used, and whether it harms the original's market value. AI models like ChatGPT reduce traffic to platforms like Stack Overflow and Wikipedia, which suggests they just replace rather than transform content. They also process entire datasets, mimicking style and structure even when not copying directly. Techniques like RLHF refine responses but make them more similar to training data, making fair use harder to justify. Given its market impact and content similarity, AI-generated outputs likely violate copyright laws. So, when you generate Ghibli-style images, AI isn't creating from scratch. It's repackaging what it learned from copyrighted works. And for this, OpenAI was under fire, sued for copyright infringement by major players like the New York Times. On November 18, 2024, Balaji was officially named as a major whistleblower in the court for this case. So, it's crystal clear why OpenAI needed to have Suchir Balaji eliminated for their own benefit. But in response, what did the police do? They never bothered about testing the Glock for fingerprints or DNA. They never performed a ballistic analysis. They didn't even check for gunshot residue on Balaji's hands, a standard procedure in cases of alleged suicide by firearm. If he had truly fired the gun, there should have been proof. But the authorities weren't looking for proof. They were looking for a way to close the case. Why? Were they tipped off to do so? Because that's what it looks like. But anyway, amidst all these came a voice that changed everything: Elon Musk. A longtime critic of OpenAI, Musk publicly questioned Balaji's death, amplifying the suspicions already growing online. Because this wasn't the first time a whistleblower had met a sudden, suspicious end. The tech industry had seen this before: voices silenced, disappearances, self-inflicted deaths that didn't fit the profile. It is undeniable that the timing of Balaji's death was too perfect, too clean. But his family wasn't willing to let it slide. Refusing to accept the official ruling, they raised $85,000 to fund their own forensic investigation. They brought in UCLA pathology professor Dr. Dinesh Rao, a man known for his relentless pursuit of the truth. And after examining the crime scene evidence, Rao downright dismissed the self-harm claim entirely. He pointed out ignored blood patterns, questioned the gunshot trajectory, and blamed the authorities for their failure to conduct even basic forensic tests. As a result, public pressure mounted. Thousands signed petitions demanding an independent inquiry. Some called for the FBI to step in, suspecting a cover-up. And the deeper people dug, the more unsettling the story became. For example, the toxicology report was quite unexpected. Alcohol and multiple drugs found in Balaji's system, including GHB, which is a party drug, a date rape drug. This was not something Balaji was known to take. According to a fresh update from the San Francisco police, Balaji's internet search history showed he was looking up brain anatomy. The gun used was his, and tests found gunshot residue on both his hands. Plus, the toxicology report showed he had alcohol and amphetamines in his system. But how much of it is true, and where it leads, remains a complete mystery. But one factor we just cannot overlook: that this is not a random, petty crime, but a highly sensational one that should have sparked outrage. The media should have been all over it, but nothing happened. Instead, just as the case started gaining attention, a major transition happened in San Francisco. In 3 days, a new mayor was set to take office. And guess who led his transition team? None other than Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. So, was this just another coincidence? Or a calculated move to cover up something bigger? Officially, the case of Suchir Balaji is closed. But does it really seem that simple to wrap up so quickly? Isn't it obvious that he was murdered by the AI company to protect their own interests? And if Suchir had lived to submit his evidence, would we have ever seen this Ghibli image trend at all? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this is important for you. You have also fed plenty of private pictures to GPT-4 to turn them into Ghibli images. And now that you understand how the GPT model works, it gave you those cute Ghibli arts. But in return, it secretly stored your data without permission, violating your privacy as well. If you found this video enlightening, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories like this. See you soon in our next.